Hello, my name is Alyssa. I'm the Associate Blog Editor for the San Jose State Writing Center blog called The Right Attitude. And today I'm here interviewing my good friend Foram. Foram is a journalist, a content developer, and a children's book author. And I will be asking Foram questions about all of her varied writing experience. So, Foram, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So we'll get right into it. First, I want to start us off by asking you, as such a multifaceted writer who's done writing in a lot of different industries, what are some common documents or written materials that you specialize in creating?
Well, I am a journalist by trade, so I think feature writing is what I guess I would say I would specialize in, like feature writing and essays. Personal essays is something that I really enjoy writing and that I've found success doing. That's a little bit more like personal essays are, they can be journalistic. They can also be very, I don't know, it's a good way to put it. Like it's more about storytelling and less
Mm,
about reporting. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Um,
okay.
and then for my day-to-day job, I am what I think is best described as a content strategist, but like a technical writer.
Okay.
So I work in right currently I'm on contract at Pinterest doing helps supporting the help and community team, the content design team that sits under the community team to write and publish help center content and then also policy content that I help
Oh, okay.
proofread and then put in the CMS to publish. Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, so a couple different types of writing.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so interesting. Next, I'd like to ask you about just kind of in general how you approach feedback. Can you share an instance in which constructive criticism significantly improved something that you were writing? So, for example, if you've ever been told that your writing was like, confusing or it wasn't finished or it was inaccurate, yeah, how do you approach getting that feedback? What did you do?
I have two examples that come to my mind. Feedback's really hard, I think, when you're used
Yeah,
to writing something that's personal.
totally.
I think anybody can relate to that. And so, um, when I really enjoy writing personal essays that are part reported and part personal essays, so that these types of pieces often will come approach a topic from like a hybrid lens. So you kind of share like the bigger picture, and then you can narrow in on like a personal experience, and usually that's something that's the opportunity to tell your personal story at like a very specific example of this like larger topic. So
Hmm.
one example of that is in 2019 I wrote an essay for HuffPost on growing up as what I called as a motel kid. I grew up
Mm.
living in a mom and pop hotel, which is a very common experience for Indian American
Hmm.
kids of this generation, of like the first, second generation. And so I told this story. It was like probably one of my first personal essays, and I actually didn't really know how to approach it.
Mm.
But I worked with a really talented editor, and I remember like she gave me so much feedback on that story. And when you first get an article back and it's like annotated with all these comments and notes, like for me personally, my heart always drops a little bit because I'm like, oh
Yeah.
no, they didn't like it, or like they think it sucks. I mean, like to put it like sometimes you just that's just how you feel. But I think it's so important for you to, I mean, you don't always have this option, but like I've been very fortunate to work with really talented editors who
Mm.
can look at your story and find opportunities for you to tell it even more impactfully, more powerfully, so that they'll like go through it with a fine tooth comb and be like, here's like a question that comes up in my mind while I'm reading this, like, can you
Mm.
dive a little deeper here, or like what if we like shift this article, section, put it up here so that it like just flows a little bit differently. And she was like one of my favorite editors to work with, and I was so happy to have that experience because it was for me a really positive experience for writing a personal essay, and it made me want to do it more.
Yeah.
helps you remember too, though, that like somebody can look at like see your personal story that you've written, you know, just make it bleed red, but like it can be so helpful if you approach it from that perspective and you like think about it as like this is somebody who's helping me tell my story in a more impactful way. Again,
Yeah.
like that doesn't always happen. I've also worked with editors who like sometimes are just a little bit nitpicky,
Mm.
and like you may not agree with them, and I think that that's really important as a writer to remember that you can sometimes disagree with feedback, but it's like important not to think about it as something that's personal,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
I have also been an editor in my life, and so I know like what I appreciate when when I'm working as an editor and also working as a writer, like what's made me a better editor because I've worked with really talented editors. And I think it's important
Mm.
to let people's stories shine without like letting your personal bias of what you think would be better kind of get in the way, because sometimes it comes down to like some like mechanics of grammar or this and that, you know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
that stuff can kind of like get in the way of a good editor and writer relationship. But
Yeah, totally.
I think like that's one example. Another example I have is what I just published my first children's book this year, and I
Yay.
hired yeah, it was a really exciting experience. And I hired a freelance children's book editor to
Okay.
do like an editorial assessment on it. And I had a manuscript that I felt pretty good about. I had full
Yeah.
expectations that if I got a book deal from it, like it would be like an editor would look at it, we would then like work on it, et cetera, et cetera. But instead, I decided to go the self-publishing route. And I think even if I hadn't, like this was a really helpful step to bring in an editor at this stage. And
Hmm.
same thing, like he made that book 100 times better than it was before, just because he would like the story is still the story, a lot of the
Hmm.
language is still the language, but he was um just so strategic in the way he like helped me put myself in the shoes of a child or a parent reading that book,
Oh,
and
wow.
it just gave me such great feedback that I could then like quickly I took and implemented, and I personally was like, wow, the story is so much better
Hmm.
with that feedback. Yeah, that's a really
That's
long answer, I'm
no,
sorry.
no, that's no, it's such a great answer because you touched on something that like I think I feel like that's a really, really healthy and good way to approach feedback. Just like trying not to personalize it. It's not about like you and your skills or your talents as a person. It's more so about like enhancing the story.
Yeah.
And yeah, and just summarizing what you said, it can be helpful to work with like an outside set of eyes because other people notice things that we don't always notice,
Yeah.
like a way to like expand on the thing that you're trying to write,
Yeah.
or give more detail, or overall just to develop things a little bit better. So that's so cool. I love your example of like your personal example of writing a story and then to writing a children's book, which is
Yeah.
very impressive, very cool. So thank you for talking about that. That's great. Okay, so I want to go into my next question for you, which is all about challenges. So, Forum, what do you do when you don't know how to write something? Do you ever use any tools like ChatGPT or Grammarly or Copilot, etc.? I don't
I
know a ton
don't.
about
I
Copilot,
was
but
gonna say I don't
okay.
even know what that tool is.
Okay, good.
The short answer is no. I never use outside tools.
Okay.
Um, I think it's so important as a writer, and I mean, I get it. Like, I think this is coming more from like a creative standpoint. Like, I think that in writers who like when I'm at work, my day to day job, if I
Hmm.
run into like a writer's block situation,
Yeah.
right, or something, like there's usually examples that I can refer to in my day-to-day job where I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, let me look at other examples. There's context and like I have reference points that, I can build on. But when you're writing something creative, it's so hard to like get over writer's block. And I mean, I
Yeah.
had a number of years between like 2018 and 2020 where I was freelance writing. So I was pitching articles to like publications, and I was doing like reported features and personal essays.
Hmm.
Like I had this great writing streak, and I remember thinking like these have been stories that I've had like in the back of my mind that I've wanted to tell for so long. And
Uh-huh.
when I kind of like wrote all the stories that I wanted to, like I ran dry. That's kind of the best way to put it. I was just like, I don't have anything
Yeah.
else I want to pitch. Like I'm not like itching to like tell this story. And I remember from like a very from a standpoint of like thinking about productivity, it kind of
Mm.
hard because I was like, I'm not writing anymore. I don't know what to pitch. And I was like, I had been on this high for a few years where I was just like writing so much and it was so like fulfilling and exciting. And then when I ran out of ideas, I was like, what do I do? Like I
Yeah.
who am I if I'm not writing? Like now, and you
Yeah.
start having all these questions of like, like, is that it? Like, have I kind of done? Like, will I be relevant when I want to write again? Like, will anybody care that, I wrote this great thing 2 years ago? Like,
Oh,
it's
wow.
a lot of
Yeah.
self-doubt. And
Totally.
I think that that happens with any creative field. And there was
Yes.
one quote that I really leaned on. Like, there was this guy who had he like launched this really cool like podcast back in or SoundCloud series like back in the day that I didn't know about, but he turned it into a Netflix show and it was I can't remember what it's called, but
Oh,
it's
wow.
basically he like interviews he takes like pieces of people's like songs like big like celebrities who like songs that are well known, and then he
Okay.
interviews this celebrity and then he um has like they like talk about how they came up with that song. That's the series. So this
Okay.
guy was interviewed by some outlet about, his success that he had kind of like seen overnight, but it hadn't been overnight. He had been like working on it for so long. And they asked him like, so what's next? Like, and he said something that's so profound that stuck with me, that I think is like such good advice when you think about like hitting these sort of like creative blocks. He
Yeah.
said like, there are times in your life when you're
Mm.
planting, when you're harvesting, and he basically, alluded to the fact that like all these years, like, all this work was him like doing the work. Like he had been planting, he had been tending to his garden, and like
Yes.
he's in this phase of his career where he was like harvesting all the benefits of that work and all the fruit of his labor. And he, made a point to say like, but it's cyclical. Like, now like maybe like it's time to go back to the beginning. Like maybe now it's time to like put some roots down and
Yeah.
and that was so profound to me. So I was like, that's such a great way to think about creating something. Like
Yeah.
it's not a tap that's like endless. Like
Yes.
it's creation. Like we create from like lived experiences, and
Yeah.
like and thoughts and relationships and like things that happen to us and then things that we observe. And I took that to heart and was like, okay,
Hmm.
it's time for I've told all the stories that I've wanted to tell for a while. Like I feel very fulfilled. I'm gonna like let myself live for the next
Yeah.
few years. And like I know myself. I think that's so important as a creator to like know the signals that you that tell you like, hey, something's churning. Like, let's get to work. Let's like put it out there. Let's start like
Yeah.
expressing ourselves. And I know what that feels like. And I really was like, let me disengage from this like capitalist
Yes. Thank you.
way of thinking about creation, right? Like I was like, I'm not like I no, like that's not how this works. And I'm
Yeah.
gonna tell you, like I had created a formula for myself because I had a spreadsheet of like all the pitches, which I think is great. I think this is very helpful. This part I fully endorse. All the
Hmm.
pitches that I had to send, like what was picked up, like notes, editors, like context. So I had a spreadsheet so I could track it.
Very
But then
smart.
like literally, like I had tabs for like every year between 2018 and 2020, and I had was like, oh, this year my like success rate was like 10%. The next year was like 25%. The next year was 30%. And so I was like, okay, so my next goal is
Yeah.
gonna be 45% or something. I was like, that's insane.
Yeah.
don't believe like that. I can believe it, but I can't believe I held myself up to that standard of like, we have to keep like
You have to
producing more and
keep
more and more and more.
churning output.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's hard to like when you work in capitalism, when you work in like an
Mhm.
environment where you have to create and you just
Yeah.
churn. And then that's also what you do in your like personal life. That's why because I'm a writer, I consider myself a writer through and through. Like what I do for my day-to-day job is very formulaic. It's very like it
Yeah.
requires no creativity. It actually makes use of, like the like skills that I have as a writer, yes.
Yeah.
But like it is not a creative job. It's actually very right-brained. Oh my gosh. Is it right-brain creative or left-brain creative?
Gosh, you know what? I don't know. I could
Well, I
Google it
hope
really
this is
quickly.
not getting published because it's very the brain side of your brain that is not
Yeah.
creative. Like, it's project management, a lot of strategy work, a lot of like just like stuff that's very formulaic.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that that's what I do for my day-to-day job. It makes use of the skill set that I already have like foundationally as a writer.
Hmm.
But then my personal life is like about writing. And this
Yeah.
children's book is such a good example because I ended up having like a 5 year dry spell. And it was so hard for me as like somebody
Mm.
who was like, constantly battling with like telling myself it's okay, but
Yeah.
also being like, okay, when is it gonna come? When is it gonna? And in this
Yeah.
5 year time, like I had a baby, I was a new mom, I went to postpartum depression. Like it was like a lot. I was
Mm.
there's no creativity here. Like this is
Yeah.
all that creative energy was literally spent in creating a child. like,
Yes, and
like
sort of surviving that.
and sort of surviving.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I was just like, when it comes, it will come, it will come, it will come. And in 2020, when I was like trying really hard to continue like, you know, pouring from a tap that was dry,
Yeah.
I had this idea of this children's book. And the idea was there. And I remember I like sat down and I tried to write it and I was like, I don't know how to write this. Like, this is not good. And I
Mm.
was like, okay, this is just, I'm forcing it. I'm pushing it. And I don't know. I spent the last 5 years really doing a lot of research on like how to write a children's book. So I kind of learned from a
Wow.
book standpoint. But then I had a
Okay.
baby and I read a lot of children's books.
Yeah.
And I am the type of creative person that learns by doing or by immersing myself in kind of that medium.
Okay.
And one day last year, last like summer, I was like, I'm gonna just sit down and write this and see what comes out. And I wrote that first draft of my book like in an afternoon. And I was just
Wow.
like, it was just so like but like cathartic. I think that's a way to put it because I was like, wow, it really came out when it was gonna come out.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
I didn't have to force it. And since then, I mean, I have been pitching more. I've gotten like, I'm a big believer that like if there's a story that you want to tell and you can't get it placed right away, like hold on to it because
Mm.
I have gotten really esoteric stories placed. Like the Taco Bell story is a perfect example.
Which I love the Taco Bell
Like
stories. I
I pitched
literally
that
think about
story
that all
so
the
many
time.
times. Oh my God, thank you so much. That's so like
I
I
told
pitched
everyone
that.
about it. I sent it to my parents, my husband. I sent it to everyone, and I was like, "This is my
Oh my God, that's so, thank you so much. That's so
friend."
sweet. That story is like the perfect example of like going
Mm,
out on top and being don't try, this is not an endless tap. Like,
yeah.
it's not sustainable for you to try to pull from something that is not there. And
Hmm.
that story was such a great way to go out, like, and then for 5 years, I didn't write anything. And it was
Yeah.
hard, but I was like, that's the story that I had been like pitching and pitching and pitching. And then like New York Magazine picked it up. Like that was like
So
a
incredible.
dream come true. And it was
Hmm.
trending on Apple News. Like people were sharing it with me. Like I was like, this is amazing. And then when I wrote my children's book, like, I had all that energy to like I have a background in marketing too. And so
Mm,
I self-published the whole thing. Like I did all the research. I did all the marketing. I did all the, I mean, I sold over 200 books, like, but it was all, it was all the skills that I had like acquired over the years, not
yeah.
just the writing, not
Right.
just the editing. And yeah, like I think that if you have a block, if you like don't, I don't think like I think like ChatGPT and those things are great for like I don't know, but like I don't think they're necessary, and I think they are stealing work from people. I think that
Well,
like
yeah.
we have people have created what like
Yeah.
create for all of time, and if we're not
Hmm.
going to use our experiences, our brains, like if you're not going to sit down and like do the work, that when it comes to writing, like
Yeah.
I just don't think that it's like I don't know. I don't endorse any of those tools at all. I think it's so important to as a writer to like do the work.
Yeah. I love your I mean, I love everything that you said, obviously. I'm a little biased, but in particular, thank you for bringing up this like terrible feeling of having to always be productive in the traditional like capitalistic sense and then
Yeah.
feeling really bad about yourself when your creativity is not like coming out. Like you talk about it as like a spout that you just turn on and like
Yeah.
when you can't just turn it on, when it doesn't just naturally flow out of you, you
Yeah.
feel really bad. You feel like and that's because, like, in this society, our productivity is directly tied to our livelihood. And so,
Yeah.
as a creative, that's really in conflict, and that's really hard.
Yeah.
But I like your, like, general sentiment around challenges and creativity being more of a garden, that you sometimes there are times of harvest, and sometimes
Yeah.
things are growing, things
Yeah.
are being planted, things are being tended. You
Yeah.
are cultivating personal experiences and you need to like live life in order to do that.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. It should not be something that you plug into a tool like ChatGPT and then have it like come out and then you're able to like, I mean, sure, if you want to do that, okay. I respect your point of view and
Yeah.
I align myself to that. I think if you want to use it for inspiration, fine, but the idea should still be your own.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I just don't think it means as much.
I mean, I like I'm an environmentalist because I care
Well,
about
yeah.
like
Also,
anything, right? So I'm
yeah.
like, so the thing is with ChatGPT, I'm like, Google has served us fine all these years. Like, do the just put it into Google. Like, you
Mm,
should do research, and I don't
of
like,
course.
you know what I mean? But it's like the shortcuts I think will only cut the legs out under us in if
Mm,
like as writers, because if you're outsourcing the writing work
yeah.
as a writer, like I think that you should in that moment take a minute to like
Mm,
question your ability to write. You know what I mean? Like I don't think that the idea
yeah.
your identity should be singular. I think we have like we're multifaceted beings. Like we don't have
Yes,
singular
multi-skilled.
identity. But
Hmm.
like if you want to be a writer and like you are outsourcing the writing,
Hmm.
I don't know, like
Yeah.
maybe that's not the field, but also I don't think that that should be the deciding factor. Like I think that you should do it a little harder. Like
Yeah.
do
Like,
it, do the work. Like spend the time, what is it that you want to write? Like if you're trying to write a personal essay, go into Google, see if like someone else has written that essay. Like that's so
yeah.
easy to do. So I just like I'm trying to think like when I would ever even consider putting something into ChatGPT, and I wouldn't. I don't
Okay.
even see.
Good for you.
Yeah, like I said, maybe like there's just not even a scenario in which it even makes sense to me. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Because like writing in itself is so individualistic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like
Especially writing like a story, a personal
right,
story.
a
Like
personal story.
you,
Yeah,
yeah, you said something that was like very human, and I think this is it's uncomfortable, but this is the way that it should be.
yeah,
When you were talking about like writing your manuscript and you sat down to write it and you're like, okay, this is bad. I don't
yeah.
know how to do this. Like, ugh. I think that discomfort is exactly where you're supposed to be when you are
Yes,
attempting something new. Like
yeah,
that is what makes that's a human thing. It's a very
yeah,
real thing to be
yeah.
like, okay, I'm starting this thing and I'm scared and I'm stuck and I have no idea what I'm doing. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna like
Right.
back up. I'm gonna go do all of this research. I'm gonna
Yeah,
like, educate myself on the topic. And then when I feel like I've sufficiently done that,
yeah.
I'm gonna sit down and I'm going to try again. And I feel like that is what writing a story is.
I agree. I will. I actually I've come up with one example in which I can see ChatGPT being useful and that I have
Okay.
guiltily used myself, and that is in writing a cover letter because I think that's an absolute waste of time, and that's like a whole other conversation. But that is the one time where I've been like, oh my God, just write this cover letter because I cannot. I don't.
Yeah.
Like I have used it in those instances.
Okay.
I think.
When you're like, yeah, when there's a clear goal in mind, when you're trying to meet a need and you're essentially pressed for time. Okay, got it.
But it's interesting because that also opens up like this whole can of worms of like of what I do as a day-to-day job and like
Mm,
will it be a position in the future because like
mm.
will, help center content just be written by
Written by AI.
AI.
Right.
And I believe so. Like my personal opinion is yes, like that is the future. I don't think this
Hmm.
position will last much longer.
Yeah.
But we're still at a point where they're literally using like we are literally training the AI. It's just crazy because we are literally training the people that will replace us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like I see that happening.
Yeah. It's
I
very
don't think
dark.
that if you have a job like mine, you should be using AI because it is not we are not in a place where it's accurate, like fully accurate.
Hmm.
It's not like what is the point if you're just going to use AI to do your job in that way? Like
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree with you.
I mean, I have very strong opinions about AI and they're not mostly not positive.
Got it. Noted. Um, separately, this is a story I'll tell you about later, but separately, I just wrote a blog post. Oh, I collaborated on a blog post with someone else, but it was all about everything that ChatGPT got wrong. And so
Mm,
I think we're gonna publish that on the blog later, but I'll also tell you all about it because it was kind of a wild experiment.
yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to move us along. I'm going to ask you my penultimate question, which is all
Sure.
about how, or can you tell us about an approach or your approach when you are writing something collaborative?
Mm. That's hard because I don't like to
Yeah, I
collaborate.
don't like to collaborate. I
When
mean,
I'm writing, I
mhm.
don't like to collaborate. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you because again,
Okay.
very personal experience.
Yeah.
I, but I think that like a writer-editor relationship is like the best example of something
Okay.
that's very collaborative. And, we touched on that. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's about being open and also, but like, and I do want to reiterate, like in the collaboration part of it should be that like you also voice your opinion. Like as a young
Okay.
writer, I think it's very hard and
Yeah.
you're never told like in school or by anybody else that hey you should just be like I disagree with this edit
Mm.
but like I have done that in the past. I don't always do it but I do now sometimes like I worked with a publication recently where they did like 3 rounds of edits and I was like this is a lot. Like, is this
Yeah.
standard? Like, I was, I kind of at the end, I was like, yeah, wow, I really feel like this article's like crap or something because like you guys have like really like edited the crap out of it. But
Yeah.
they were like, for them, it was very standard to do 3 rounds of edits. And
Okay.
part of it was that they had
Yeah.
two different editors looking at it two different times. And so that kind of led to like conflicting
I
edits.
see.
But I like that was something that I was like, but this editor just told me this thing, and now and the second editor was like, yeah, you mean sometimes that happens because of the system that we have set up.
Got it.
So if editor A already told you this, like that's fine. But like that
Yeah.
wouldn't have come up unless I had been like, hey, this is weird, and also like I don't quite disagree. I don't quite agree.
Yeah.
And that comes again from like you like have to pick and choose. Like you can't always just be like, no, I don't like it because I don't like it.
Yeah.
Like, does it really matter? From their standpoint, editors will look at it things from like style guidelines and
Yes.
things that are consistent with their brand.
Yes.
And some of it will be preferences and stuff like that. But like sometimes it just doesn't matter, even if you don't like it, and you would have done things differently because that's me a lot.
Yeah.
No, but like if it matters, if it's like a core part of the story, if you really feel strongly about it, like I think that it's important to speak up and say why. You never know. Like sometimes editors will be like, great, sure, no problem. And sometimes they'll
Okay.
push back. And then you kind of have to decide, like how do you
Yeah.
resolve any conflict in any part of your life? Like
Yeah.
you have to think about how you're gonna move forward with that. Maybe don't work with that publication again, like if you don't like it, or you know, consider pitching to a different editor or something like that. Um,
Hmm.
at work, it kind of is the same thing. Like as
Okay.
somebody who sits on a content team, like we have content standards, we have best practices, like, and here comes everybody, who you need
Mm.
to get to approve your content because your content is like related to their area of work.
Yeah.
I know you know what I do, so like I'll just like
Yeah.
summarize it when if you use this quote, like you know exactly what I'm talking about. But
Okay.
like sometimes people will be like, I really, I think that this should be this, and it's kind of like that's just an opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think that's fine. You're allowed to have an opinion, but like I'm deferring to our content best practices and our standards,
Hmm.
and like and from like where I sit as a content strategist who is looking at this from a, like an unblocking point of view and like a help, educational point of view. Do I really
Yeah.
need to use language that feels very marketing?
Marketing. Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the thing that comes up the most often. But
Okay.
again, like I think it's about like advocating, using like past examples and like things that you can refer to. I think documentation,
Okay.
like, I am going off of these best practices or like,
Right.
so that way there's less room for people to feel like you're just being argumentative for being argumentative. It's
Right.
picking and choosing your battles. Like
Hmm.
sometimes it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Are you,
Yeah. Maybe
is
it depends on the project. Hmm.
totally like, is it really going to affect the accuracy or the integrity of the content? If yes, then yeah, like maybe speak up. If not, maybe let this one go because
Yeah.
you'll have to work with this person again. Like, and that
Yes.
comes up all the time. Like it happens day to day. I mean, it's
Yeah.
hard because anything you write, you feel personally attached to. I feel like that even when I write help center content.
Yeah.
Like
I
I,
think that's because you're a good writer. I think that's why. You like take pride in your work and you have that
right.
integrity.
Yeah.
But, like you mentioned, sometimes it's like okay, it's like a pick your battle thing. And it's
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, okay, is this a hill I want to die on? Or is it more important to like attend to this professional working relationship over
Yes.
this like thing that
Yeah.
maybe it's inconsequential for
Right.
like the purpose of what you're working on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess I
Heard.
do collaborate quite a bit on work that I do.
But you don't
I
like it
mean,
overall.
yeah. Like it's funny because like my husband and I have talked about like putting together like a cookbook that
Oh,
documents like
cool.
recipes from our like regional areas of India, and I'm kind of like I don't want to work on that with him. Like, because like we have very strong opinions. I'm kind of like,
Mm,
it's like a weird territory of working on something creative with my husband. Like, I don't know if
okay.
my feelings hurt. I don't know if like, I can go into it not feeling like I'm the better writer or like, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, it's just that's like an area where I don't really want to collaborate. I don't really like collaborating on writing something. But when
Okay.
I am collaborating, but I do tend to collaborate quite a bit once that thing is written, if that makes
Okay. Yeah, like not the actual writing of the thing, not the actual like harvesting of the
sense.
ideas and like telling of the story
Yeah.
necessarily, but more so like the
The feedback.
publishing
Yeah.
process and
Yeah.
okay, got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, important distinction to make.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Like, I mean, I'm sure people collaborate on writing all the time. It's just not something that I end up dealing with. And also, I try to avoid if I can.
Real.
It is who I am.
Yeah. Okay, so my last question for you today,
Yeah.
Forum, is it's on the topic of advice. So I'm
Okay.
going to ask you if you can share a piece of advice that changed how you write.
It's the thing about the garden.
Okay,
And it wasn't
totally.
direct advice. It was just something that it's that, and there was another like quote from God, what's his name? He's the guy who does like Medea and um
Oh, Tyler Perry,
Tyler
right?
Perry. I was watching some interview with Tyler Perry, and he said something about like his movies are like not. they're for Black people. Like they are for his community, his like
Mm-hmm.
for the, and he was talking about the criticism that he often
Mm.
receives or like, well, about those movies from like people who are not in that community. And
Oh, I
he said
see.
something like, those stories are not for them.
Got it.
And he said something about, telling stories about your community. You writing for your community, about your community, for your community. And it really like hit home for me because I was in this phase of like writing a lot about like the Indian American experience and like the
Mm-hmm.
different facets of it. And I was really taken back about that because I was like, that's such a beautiful way to approach like writing about people and like writing stories about a certain group of people is like remembering that, like, yes, people are going to have a lot of opinions, but like those stories are not for everybody. You are
Yeah.
welcome to read that story and you are welcome to learn from that story
Mm-hmm.
and you're welcome to share that story. And you can even have your own like bigoted opinion about that story if you want to, but it's not for you. So like,
Right.
it doesn't, you don't get to like decide
Yeah.
whether something is good or not because you
Mm-hmm.
don't like it or because
Mm.
you're whatever the case, And so that was like something that I heard at that time in my life where I was like, I feel very called to like tell these stories about the Indian American experience, which is not, it's like very, very heterogeneous
Mm.
and it's portrayed very homogenous.
Yes.
Like Indian Americans are, certain type of people, certain archetype, like
Mm.
this, and like there are, it's what drew, like called me to like write about like being a motel kid. I was like, this is like so many of us that
Mm-hmm.
nobody talks about. Like this is like a whole part of like Indian Americans that like within the Indian American community is very stereotypical. Like people, everybody knows like the motel people and yet like outside of our nobody, we're not represented, like the stories like are never told.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think there's like a lot, actually that HuffPost article, I don't know if I ever told you, I don't know why I would have told you, but somebody from like a talent agency reached out to me after reading that article and they were like, this we would love to like shop this around for like movie rights or like a show or something.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, what?
That's
Like
incredible.
found it. And I remember, I mean, they were like legit. And I signed a contract with them for like a year to like for them to shop it around. And they were like, yeah, we sent it to like Mindy Kaling's people. We sent it to Mira Nair's people, which is so funny because now everybody knows who Mira Nair is because she's Zoran Mamdani's mom. Uh,
Okay.
and I
Wow.
like it was just so cool because at that time they were also working on a show that like got shelved. It was like an ABC show about a motel family.
Wow.
And it was like this Bollywood actress was in the show and it got shelved. And it's such a bummer that it got shelved because I would have, like, so I remember thinking like, oh my God, the time is ripe right now. It's for me to
Yeah.
like people are interested in like this like little group of people.
Yeah.
And I felt more compelled to be like, yeah, like somebody might care, which is what then made me want to tell this Taco Bell story. I was like, it's so niche. And yet I
Mm-hmm.
think people would like be really interested in knowing, and I know Indians would be like, "Oh my God, finally somebody
Yeah.
talking about like how much we love Taco Bell and the Mexican pizza and like why it's like such a cult favorite." And that's exactly what happened. So I think my biggest advice is like, tell stories about things that you know and
Okay.
that not necessarily like know from personal experience, but that like you like are familiar to you. Like
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to, go to far into the earth to like report on people living there. You
Mm-hmm.
can, that's wonderful. Somebody should, but like
Yeah.
talk about like your community. Tell the stories that like because they're worth telling and somebody will want to read them or
What
watch them.
an Oh God, yeah. What an inspirational like note to end on. And those are all of my questions for you, but Man, I feel inspired.
Oh,
Like, I mean, I'll tell you more about this later, but like there are a couple stories rolling around in my head, that I know if I took the time
yeah.
and put in the work to tell them, they could be really, really gratifying, good stories to tell. Um, and so I don't know. Thank you for
Have you?
your
uh,
advice.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm taking it to heart, and I hope that like people who watch this interview will also take it to heart. So, um, yeah, Forum, you're incredible. You're so talented. You're so impressive.
Oh
I'm gonna go look up all of everything you've ever written.
my gosh.
I'm gonna use Google to do
Yeah,
it.
please. You know what? You don't even have to because it's all on my website.
Oh, great. Perfect.
I like you don't need to ask ChatGPT to summarize who I am. All you have to do is put it on my website. I will send you the name of that person who like because I talk about this all the time and it's like these
Okay.
two things really like have been really instrumental in changing the way I approach
Okay.
writing and creating in general. Um,
Please.
and I like remember Tyler Perry. That like I remember because it's. And I think he did an interview with like David Letterman in that series that he did, that long
Oh,
form.
okay.
I think that's where I saw it. But the other guy is like so like unknown, and if I told you his name, you'd be like, oh yeah, this Netflix series, like they did this whole. I don't even know where I saw this article, but like
Okay.
it was so like I should email him and be like, you really like what you said really made an
Thank
impact on
you.
me. Like so yeah,
Yeah.
because because here I am like 5 years later and I'm like still, I hold on to that because it's really grounding to remember that like
Hmm.
we have seasons of our lives and like I'm
Yeah.
excited to feel because right now I feel very much like I'm in a new season of life of creating again and I feel very like
Awesome.
excited by it because I'm like it's fun. It's great. I love feeling like, this little itch of like, I gotta get this thing out. Like, I gotta get it out of my body and like, so somebody
Yeah.
can read it. And my favorite experience of creating and writing is when someone's like, I feel like that. Oh my gosh. Like I
Yes.
love the connection that it creates between people. And that is what I love about writing and storytelling is like,
Yeah.
it's not the like recognition, but it's like, oh my gosh, like she said the thing that I was trying to say. And I love that like experience that, that connection it creates between people. Cause then like, I love it when like you tell somebody something and they're like, I feel exactly like
Yeah.
because it's just such a fun
It's a
like
great way to bond with people
totally. And I just
and
think that
build
like that
connections.
happens organically with people that you don't know sometimes and it's because like through these lived experiences and so I feel very fortunate to have followed this path of writing because it's like something where I'm like I chose to be a writer because I have a lot of interest, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was
It
like,
does.
I like to do everything. Like I like to talk about everything. I like to do everything. I'm really very interested and curious. And the only
Yeah.
thing that like could make sense for me was to like write because I don't have to pick one thing
Yeah.
to like do in my life, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I agree with so much of what you just said, but specifically I always think about writing. So I'm a writing tutor and I tell people that I work with, I tell students that I work with that writing is thinking clarified. And so if you're someone who thinks about stuff, writing is a
Yeah.
great tool for you. And it means you might have to do draft after draft because
Yeah.
you're working out what your thoughts are on the thing.
Yes.
And yeah, and like that means considering it from all different
Yeah.
angles. And yeah, I'm a big writing nerd like you, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, it's great. It's fun.
Thank
I
you
would
for
love
being the
to hear
most,
about
yeah.
your ideas. I love,
Oh.
like, I think that when you start pitching, have you written for, like, because your background's in journalism too, right?
So it actually is not, but it's in creative writing.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah. So then, so
Yeah.
like, you're meant to be like an essayist. Um,
Yeah.
like that's what essayists do. It's funny that that's even a thing, but yeah, like I would love to push you in the direction of like getting some stories out there. So reach out to me
Yeah.
anytime. Like I love talking about writing.
Ooh, I will. You are the
Helping.
perfect person to interview for part of this blog series, but also just like the perfect person to like motivate me personally,
Oh, thank
to
you.
do the thing, to do the thing that like is in my
Yeah.
mind. I've always wanted to do it, but I've never, maybe, I don't know, maybe no one's ever pushed me to do it. So thank you for being
Yeah,
the
it's
kick.
kind of that's I think like I didn't start freelancing until like there I'm in these Facebook groups where they like there's one that these binders groups where it's like a theme, it's like binders for da 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 da, and there's a binders group that's like editors connecting freelance writers or something, and like sometimes editors will post like opportunities in there, and they one time like in
Wow.
2015 someone was like I'm looking for someone, a person of color, to like write an opinion piece about hilariously about like the sexual allegation against Morgan Freeman. And I pitched
Mm.
something, and I was like, and I remember feeling so nervous because I was like, because the deadline was like the next day, and I was like, can I do
Wow.
this?
Okay.
This is crazy. And I pitched it, and I got accepted. And I remember I was like, yeah, I can do it. Like I
Yeah.
was nervous. I was like, what if I'm up so late and I'm tired? And I was like, that's crazy.
Mm.
That's a crazy thing to be afraid of, right? Like I was like I was like, I'll go home after work, I'll eat dinner, and then I'm just gonna knock it out. And I did, and that was like my first like big because it was for the Independent, and it was for their like opinion section.
Okay.
And that was it. And I was like, oh, I can do this. Like I can pitch stories and get them picked up. And
Yeah,
like
girl.
after
Hmm.
that, you just it's kind of addictive. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like that feeling of like getting a pitch accepted and like writing and like getting it out of your body, like it's a high.
Yes, getting it out of your body.
Yeah.
Big
Yes.
on that. Hmm.
It's,
Hmm.
I mean, that is a part of, I think, like creators that I think is like a very universal experience is like
Yeah.
when you feel like you need to express something, you can kind of almost like physically feel it.
Yeah.
And I think if you feel it,
Hard
your
relate.
body's telling you something that like you got to get it
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah.
get those stories out, Alyssa. Like I'm excited.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm going to stop recording just to
Okay.
end our interview now, but you and I are going to keep talking.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Forum, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being on the blog today. It was wonderful to hear from you. Thank you again.
Thank you.